Welcome to BAM, Badass Moms with Lori and Jenny. We are moms on a mission to share women's stories about life, fitness, aging, relationships, travel, and much more. Hello, friends, and thanks for listening. I just wanted to take a second to give you a quick reminder about subscribing to the show. If you have not already, just take a moment and do so. This will make sure that you never miss a daily bite or an upcoming episode. And in addition to that, if you have a few extra moments and like to drop us a review, we'd really appreciate it. And there's also a sponsor of the show located at the bottom of all of our episodes. Once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for being badass.
Well, welcome to another episode of the BAM. And today we are so excited. We have Amy Shoenthal on the show. Amy is a best-selling author, just launched a new book, a journalist, a speaker. I think recently did something for TEDx. So very excited to hear about that. Marketing consultant, known for her work with major brands like Procter & Gamble, Google, and also the founder of her own business, Visionaries Collective, where she assists other founders in elevating their presence within the industry through ghostwriting, LinkedIn posts, media articles, and blog posts. And I could probably use your services, Amy, for my own business. And as I mentioned, bestselling author. So the new book, The Setback Cycle, which just launched in March, and it's already on the bestseller list. Yeah. So we're super excited to have you here today. So thank you.
Well, Jenny, you forgot she's a mom.
Oh, and a mom. Yes. Badass mom. Hello. Yes. So we want to hear all the things, and we want to hear how that applies to, how that lands with being a mom too, and all the things. So.
Oh yeah. No one knows setbacks more than moms.
Oh, I know.
Well, what Jenny forgot to tell you is clearly after she just said all the amazing things you've done, you're clearly Superwoman. Right? All the things you've juggled and do. So I want to kind of dive deeper. How have you been able to balance this crazy whirlwind of things you have going on, plus being a mom to a 5-year-old daughter?
I don't know that I have a perfect answer for this, honestly. I think that I feel like not the cliche advice, it's very, very true. The advice that you always hear is you can do it all, but not all at the same time. Yeah. And so, but I kind of find that changes on a day-to-day basis. So when I would be traveling a lot for the book tour, I made sure to do something really special with my kid the day before. There was a day where she was off from school, and I think the next day I was set to travel to either Nashville or LA, and I knew I'd be gone for a few days. So I took her to we live in New York City, and I took her to the American Girl doll store, to the little salon to get the doll's ear pierced. Yep. And then I took her to go have lunch at the Plaza Hotel because you got to take advantage of living here. And I also just felt let me have a really special mommy-daughter day before I have to go away. And then when I come back from my trips, I always bring her a present. And there's a little bit of specialness on each end. And then, balancing running the business and client work. It was so funny. I was at a client's office the day before the book launch, and we were doing a big strategy session and all kinds of planning. I was interviewing someone to join the marketing team that I consult for. And everyone was like, when does your book come out? Isn't it tomorrow? And I was like, yeah. They were like, what are you doing here? And I was like,
I got shit to do.
Seeing all my clients because I'm launching a book. What do you mean? I have to earn an income. Writing a book doesn't really earn you a huge income. You get something, but it's not gonna support me. So yeah. You do all the things, and luckily with consulting, you can sort of manage your time around your clients' needs plus what you have to do plus parenting. I find that it's much easier to be to own my time. I get to decide how I spend my time, and that can be client work, book launch stuff, and parenting.
So is she in kindergarten now, or is that happening? Oh, okay. Kindergarten.
I just got an email about kindergarten graduation ceremony, and that was a lot.
I know. It's so cute. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I have 2 kids graduating, one from college, one from high school in 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. And I still remember their kindergarten graduations, but yeah.
I know. It's wild.
Yeah. So it will go fast.
Yeah, it flies by. So let's go back to where it all started. Obviously, it sounds like you've always been
a writer and you've always been, interested in learning more about others. What was kind of the tipping point as a child or, as you were growing up where you're like, yeah, inquiring minds want to know and I want to share that information. I want to find out more.
I don't think there was a point. I think it was just an ongoing journey of just genuine curiosity about people and wanting to learn people's stories and then express it, through writing. And that, I can think as far back as like when I was in summer camp and I had like a little notebook and I would go around interviewing like the counselors and the group leaders and the campers. And I was like, why was I doing that as a camper? Why wasn't I like playing dodgeball, like swimming? I was doing all those other things too.
Yeah.
I have a very vivid memory of me like wanting to be the camp journalist. So I must have been in elementary school then. And I always just like thrived in writing. I feel like my English teachers always liked me better than all my other teachers. Yeah. And I went to college and I went to college for journalism. And so I have a formal journalism training, and they, the way the journalism school worked at the University of Maryland, where I went, was you had to obviously complete your coursework, but you always had to publish 10 articles somewhere externally every semester.
That's amazing.
A lot. It was a lot. But I feel like if I kind of trace my habits back to that time, it was like they trained you to sort of have a full-time thing and then be writing on the side, which was excellent training for, graduating in the early 2000s when journalism was having like a big shift, like major shift from like print to digital. And so it was a little confusing. And so I pursued a career in marketing and always just did freelance writing on the side. And I'm so glad I set myself up like that.
Yes, for sure. So one of the stories that you shared is your own professional setback at work. And I actually do want to have you share that story. It was when you were pregnant with your daughter and when you had your daughter. So tell us a little bit about that.
Of course. I've always worked in marketing agencies, various disciplines. And this one that I started working at in 2015, I loved, but it was so it was such a party environment.
Yeah.
It was like, let's go to happy hour 3 days a week. Let's go out to lunch and have like 3 cocktails at lunch. Like it was intense. And I was always kind of like, man, why didn't I work here in my 20s? This is really fun.
And I'm like, wow, I did not have that job in my 20s.
I know. And then I was kind of like, what, maybe it's best that I didn't work here in my 20s. It's been a little dangerous. But yeah, I started working there, and a couple of years in, I got married. A couple of years after that, I got pregnant. And I remember when I got pregnant, I was like, how is this going to work with like the way this company, or at least just like my department, at least, sort of does business. And they were saying all business is done at the bar. That was the saying. And I loved it. And I thrived in that environment because I'm social. I'm happy to enjoy these kinds of times. But once you're pregnant, things get different. And I couldn't go to the lunches anymore. I could. I tried to go to the lunches and just have a seltzer, but it was weird. No one wanted the pregnant woman at the bar. They felt awkward about it. And you have to understand that. And look, I went on maternity leave. I set things up. I worked so hard, and it was the summer. I gave birth in September. We had just brought in this big client, and I worked so hard to make sure that account was running so smoothly so that I could hand it off in my absence. I remember promising the client that I wouldn't give birth until we launched this thing. Obviously, it was a joke, but it was not that much of a joke, actually. She was like, no, please don't give birth until this happens. And, it was I really took a lot of pride in my work. And so when I went on leave, I felt very good about where I had left things. And I felt very confident that I had 2 people replace me, they could take over, they would do a great job. And then I could come back and, slide right into the role and do the work that I had once taken so much pride in. And I'm sure everyone listening is sort of laughing because it's such a naive take. It's very difficult for any working parent to take a leave. And my leave was very short. It was only 12 weeks, which isn't even a full 3 months.
Yeah, that's
it was really short. And so I went on leave. I came back and I was like, okay, I was actually ready to dive back into work. I didn't want to slowly come in. I wanted to do something that did not involve taking care of a newborn. I was excited. Sure. And I was told, I think the people who replaced you are just going to stay on and continue to run these businesses and initiatives. And and I was like, what am I going to do? I still had one account to run, it was not the same level of work. And I was kind of like, what am I supposed to do? And I remember my department head was like, you'll figure it out. And I was like, okay, sure. And everyone around me was like, oh my God, this is such a gift. You have such a light workload. That's so great. But it didn't feel great. And I didn't like it. And I didn't want a light workload. I wanted to maybe on some level, I wanted to prove that I could still work the way I had, or that I was still capable of thriving in the workforce in some way, even though I had, returned with the new title of mom.
Do you think the company, sorry to jump in, do you think the company thought in a weird way they were doing you a favor where you were a new mom and they were trying to say, oh, well, we don't want you to have to jump back into this large workload. So in kind of retrospective, they were kind of, letting you kind of ease your way back in? Or do you think that they were feeling like maybe you weren't as capable now that you had this, child at home that you were taking care of and also trying to come in and go back to that normal workload?
I mean, I can't comment on what the intention was, but my impression was that there just wasn't a lot of thought put into it. It was, people are happy in their roles, some things has changed. They wanted to continue on, so let's give them the opportunity. And there just wasn't thought put into what, it's like out of sight, out of mind. So when I came back, it was like, well, let's let them continue running this. They did a great job. And that was true. They did a great job and they deserved all the opportunities, but there wasn't any thought given to what I might do and how to bring the new mom. I was the first person to get pregnant on my team, to leave the workforce for caregiving reasons. I really think everyone was trying their best and making the best decisions they could, and everyone had good intentions, but at the end of the day, it impacted my career. I ran that business, and then a few years later, when they were looking at the spreadsheet, I was caught up in a round of layoffs. And I can draw a direct line to the sidelining after maternity leave, to the, number of dollars I was responsible for shrinking.
Yep.
And then we laid off. And,
that point,
the intention aside, those are the facts of what happened.
Yeah. And to that point, I cringed when I heard the story. I cringed because I have over 25 years in HR, and I don't know the size of the organization. You had clearly worked there for quite some time. So I don't know how they structured the conversation, but it is not legal to shrink somebody's job responsibilities or to shift their job when they're on leave. And so I share that as you probably don't know that as a young mom. You're just trying to navigate, and the company may not have known that either. So, but of course they're still responsible for upholding the law. So I just found it so interesting that could have been you used that whole experience to fuel your curiosity in other areas and to write the book and to do all those things. And that's great, because you could have probably filed a claim and you probably could have won.
I didn't know that at all. This is actually, I've been talking about this experience for so long.
Yeah.
I never heard that ever.
Yeah.
I had looked into, there was something that happened while I was pregnant. I was actually being evaluated for a promotion, and I was not in the room. So I didn't put this in the book because I cannot confirm or deny what words were actually said. Yeah. So please take what I'm about to say with that disclaimer of I don't know what actually happened, but my manager told me that while I was being evaluated for a promotion, my CEO found out that I was pregnant and said something along the lines of, and again, I was not in the room. Yep. Apparently she said something along the lines of, oh, good, now she has something else to look forward to. AKA, we don't have to promote her. So when I heard that story, I did look into pregnancy discrimination.
Yes.
And then I did end up getting that promotion. And so because I got the promotion, I think the lawyers told me I didn't have any because I got the promotion. So there was no discrimination. And so it was just probably an offhand comment. I don't know what was actually said. This is just how it was communicated to me at the time, which obviously you remember word for word, something like that.
Of course.
But I don't know.
To your point too, the impact of, obviously there was an issue, your job is protected when you're on leave, right? So that is the law. But even if it were a small company where your job wasn't protected, it still impacted your future earning capability, your future trajectory at that organization. And so, when women, like you said, out of sight, out of mind, and that's where the gap, the wage gap, and I know you just wrote something about that too, but that's where all the gaps come in, right? It's we're the ones taking care of the kids. We're the ones at home. And so we're not as visible sometimes, which can impact us. And I love that you have taken that and you have, what you said something about like, I don't know, basically coming back and just, coming back stronger than ever. And I can't remember exactly the way you phrased it, but after being kind of sidelined, you came back stronger than ever.
That, yes, in retrospect, sure. But is my earning potential still the same? I don't think so. If you look at it like in terms of dollar amount.
Yeah.
And look, you can't make predictions of, in retrospect, like at the end of the day, they might have made those layoff decisions just based on salary alone.
Sure. Absolutely.
So I might have still gotten laid off. I know other people, like so many people were laid off in this round that I don't know.
Like you don't know the criteria going into it for sure.
That's the thing. Like it could have all still happened in the way it happened, even if I had come back and still run the entire book of business that I had once run. But you never know. And like the other thing is, it was at an agency. Like people change accounts all the time. Like staffing shifts happen. Like it was knowing that it happened in this way, but like it wasn't that
out of the ordinary.
It wasn't that out of the ordinary. And yes, of course, what happens when you sideline an ambitious woman or like a new mother?
Yeah.
Like you just have
you light a fire under her ass is what happens when you sideline an ambitious woman.
People who are not mothers, I'm not even going to say parents. I feel like people who are not mothers do not know the drive and level of efficiency that you gain when you become a mother. It is like your superpowers are just like amplified. Yes. You have the mentality of my kids in daycare, my kids in school, nobody is sick. What can I get done in this day? Because I don't know what tomorrow will look like. And all of a sudden you have no time for BS. You have no time for anything that will waste your time. You're kind of like, why did I stay at work till 8 p.m. every night in my prior life when I am getting so much done and can be out of here by 4, but I'm just like sitting around to make sure I look like I'm committed. Like when you start not wasting time and not having like casual conversations because you're like, I want to talk to you, I want to catch up, but I need to get this done so that I can get out the door to relieve my nanny. Like the level of efficiency and also just like, I am away from my kid. How am I spending that time?
Totally. Yeah. You're hyper focused because you have to prioritize. You don't have a choice, right? Yep. And it is a gift. I mean, I do think that like I was able to your point, you still connect with your coworkers, but you're very intentional about those connections, right? It's not just wasted discussions.
Nope. You carve out specific time for that, and you carve out you're just wasting less time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you become an efficiency machine. And so when I came back, I was like, all right, I've set up childcare. But now it's a third of the workload that I used to have. Okay, I'm going to go. I always had the freelance writing as we discussed. Like I always had like humming in the background. And I always say like, it's no coincidence that my writing career skyrocketed the same year I had my daughter. And that's when I started writing more. I really stepped into that role. People started noticing. Celebrities and big name people started noticing and started reaching out to me to interview them. And all of a sudden these opportunities that were coming to me were out of this world. Like they were amazing. They were beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And I started to think like, hey, there's people over here who maybe don't believe in my capabilities or make me feel like I have to keep proving myself. But then there's people over here who are like
celebrating you
or like, I want her to tell my story. I want her to speak at my conference. Like then people started asking me like, hey, do you do marketing consulting on the side? And so by the time I was laid off, I had already formed my LLC. My website was live. I had an invoicing process. I had at least one client on retainer. And I think it was about 2 months after my layoff. I remember because I was laid off in June, and that August I was at the beach on vacation with my family when 2 big contracts, like I had sent out a lot of proposals that summer and I got 2 big contracts. And one was with a company and one was with a founder. I mean, through the company, but one was doing thought leadership for a founder and one was doing marketing consulting where I was basically like a fractional CMO for a marketing team. And I came in and I, shifted the way they did their operations, their systems. I set up a briefing process and I drove efficiencies within the team. And the other client, I started doing thought leadership for her. And I'm still working with those clients today over a year later. So it's a little like, yes, I took this moment and I didn't ignore it. And that's a big learning for working through the setback cycle. Do not.
So let's talk about that. So let's dive into the book a little bit. First off, so obviously you have interviewed a ton of people, and there started to be this theme that you were noticing along the way. And I think you had talked about like, it's kind of the messy middle that would kind of like spark your intrigue and would be the really like fascinating part of people's stories. Where along the way throughout all these interviews did the idea of writing this book really kind of come about? And you were like, aha, this is it. Like I need to help people and I, can guide them and give them tools.
It happened because I saw the theme, as you said, that everyone, when they started telling me about their career journey or their business journey or the thing that led them to what they built, the thing I was interviewing them for, was born of what happened after they encountered a setback. That could have been a personal setback, a career setback, a societal setback. I mean, I was interviewing people right after the pandemic, there was some big societal setbacks those couple years. And I just kept noticing this theme. And so I started researching it. Like, is this all just post-traumatic growth? But every setback is not a trauma. So it wasn't always a trauma. And it wasn't always just like, oh, people are learning from their mistakes, because it wasn't always their mistakes. So I was like, what is this that I'm seeing? Do we just love drama? Like, what's the deal? And I went to, I one day looked up the definition of a setback, and it was a reversal or check in progress. And I was like, that's it. It's a reversal in progress. They're working towards a goal. They're on a path moving forward, and then they're unexpectedly bumped backwards. And it's all born of a setback. It's not, it could have been the pandemic is your setback. It could have been coming back from maternity leave is your setback. It could have been a business partner pulling out of, your business, or an investor pulling their investment, or whatever it is. It always forces a reroute, which ended up in so many of the stories that I heard and then shared. It ended up that they went on a path that was better than the original path they were on. And so I continued this exploration, and I started interviewing experts, psychologists and executive coaches and a neuroscientist who all validated that, yes, this happens. It's biological. And then I came up with the framework for the setback.
Tell us about the framework.
Sure. So the framework includes the 4 phases, which I call the 4 E's. It starts with phase 1, establish. The phases are establish, embrace, explore, and emerge. And so the first phase is establish, because establishing you're in a setback is not always as intuitive as one may think. A lot of people end up sort of like unconsciously drifting into their own setbacks. And it's not until they're woken up that they realize it was a setback. So for my setback, it was when it was a year or 2 later, because I was like, this is fine. I can handle it. A coworker said to me, I saw what happened to you after you came back from maternity leave. She said, she was like, you were a great leader and you were prevented from leading, which was such a compliment, but it also like crushed me.
Heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking. And then what was really heartbreaking was what she said next. She said, I'm leaving because I want to become a mom one day. And I don't think I can do that here because I saw what happened to you. And I was like, oh my God. Like, not only did I not help myself in this scenario, I didn't make it for people coming after me. And that made me so like ill. And that's when I started being vocal about it. I told, my manager, I told the people around me, and it was awkward. It was uncomfortable, but I started just like, again, and I remember my manager was like, this is what I thought was best for the business at the time.
Sure.
Like, do it. No one did anything intentionally, but it still wasn't, So now I think everyone's just more aware, and hopefully it doesn't happen again.
So what about like being a mom now? How do we help our kids? I feel like we're in this situation or in this society where parents are constantly trying to protect their kids from experiencing setbacks because they're uncomfortable, they're hard. We don't want to watch them go through that, right? So how do we encourage the setback? How do we help support them through that so that they can learn the tools? And like you said, it's in one of your interviews, it's like building a muscle, right? If you're not exposed to it, then you can't do it in the future. So
you have to practice problem solving and getting creative. And look, I'm the setback expert, and I fall into this trap all the time. I want to make things as comfortable as I possibly can for my kid. I don't want her to, have a problem. I don't want her to have to but also like on a higher level, I want her to be able to problem solve and figure things out for herself. So I really do try to be a little hands off if she's having a conflict with another kid. I, want to just like encourage her to figure things out on her own. And look, the thing I always tell parents, or when parents ask me like, where's the Setback Cycle companion for kids or for parenting? There is a like workbook in the back of this book, and there's questions in here that you can use for yourself, and you can use it for your kids. You can ask your kids these questions. I mean, it's sort of like a lot, like it's all these little like questions, and it's like, hey, like if you're stuck in a freeze during phase 2, when you're like embracing your setback and you're not sure how to move forward, I say like, focus on what happened, but consider the following questions. Like, what just happened and how did it make you feel? Did it teach you something about what you want and what you don't want in life? Did it, are you blaming someone else for this? Are you blaming yourself? How can you stop doing that? Can you be a little kinder to that person or to yourself? And, what have you learned? And like, what new information do you have? Those are all questions that, yes, very helpful for ourselves in these moments, but why not ask our kids? They can questions.
I think those are great questions. I have a son that's almost 7. So, kind of in the same, age arena as your daughter. And it is one of those things that I think as parents, we sometimes forget is to really walk them through the steps and their emotions, right? We are kind of reactive to their emotions. They're crying, they're screaming, or like, are you okay? Like instead of kind of figuring out like what happened and digging deeper and making them kind of start to build that muscle of realizing like, yeah, they have emotions. And why did that reaction cause you to feel a certain way? So I think those tools are really, really important to start, introducing to our children, because I do think it starts to have them strategically start thinking about the cause and effect of what happened in the way they feel.
Yeah. And like, why? Like, why did it make you feel like that?
Yeah.
Like, what else is going? It's like when you ask yourself a question and when you ask your kid a question, try to go one level deeper.
Yeah. It's like coaching, right? Like if you've done any work with coaching, that's what coaches do. They dig deep and they make you think about things that you wouldn't normally think about.
Yeah. And it's uncomfortable, but honestly, the discomfort is where the transformation happens. So you have to sort of get a little more comfortable with discomfort.
I remember in college going through a period of transition, a setback. Now I know it was a setback. And I was like, I remember saying out loud to no one except for myself, I don't want to grow anymore. Like I'm done. Like it was so painful that I was like, okay, I'm done learning for now. I just need a break.
I feel like after the last few years, everyone's like talking about like the resilience and blah, blah, blah. And I always feel like we're all just like, enough building resilience. Can we just chill?
Yeah.
I would love that. I would love that. But
So speaking of chilling, I have a question. How do you kind of disconnect? What do you like to do for you? Like what are some of your passions outside of being a writer and being a mom? Like how do you kind of rejuvenate yourself? Like how do you take that break?
I am like a big fitness person. I love movement of all kinds, cycling, running, yoga, like strength workouts. My husband and I do like pretty intense HIIT workouts in our garage every weekend. So I love that. And I just like this morning, it was like very gray and gloomy. Now the sun's out, but like it was very gray and gloomy and I did not want to move. I did not want to leave my couch, but I knew, because I have felt this way before, I knew that if I just like got on the bike, I was like, no pressure, just get on the bike. And I did like an amazing 30-minute ride. I did so well. And I felt so much better after. And it really gives me energy to just move. And I've always been like this. I was like a dancer as a kid. And I've always really loved movement. And even, having a kid, being a parent, just like going to the park with my kid and bouncing a basketball and like throwing a ball back and forth or running around as she's like scooting and I'm just like chasing her. Like that's all movement. Yeah. That's good.
It's out of your head too, right? Like, especially when you're like thinking about a problem. And I would tell my husband, I'm like, I'm going to go shake some stuff loose. Well, I'm going to go for a run and shake some stuff loose. Cause I'm like, I've got too much going on up here and I just need to feel my body a little bit.
Yeah. Or like, this sounds so funny. This is not movement related, but this morning I was driving, I had to run an errand and I was driving and I came up with such a good idea because I didn't put any music on and I didn't put any podcasts on to listen to. In the car. I was just like driving. It was a short drive. all of a sudden, like I was like grabbing my phone and putting the voice memo on and like talking to myself in the car because I had such a good idea. So just, I think anything where you're not in front of a screen, or you're not, I mean, sometimes when you're exercising, you're looking at a screen, but like something where you're just like focusing on maybe nothing, or like focusing on yourself and what you have to do next. And I don't know, just anything that gets your brain in like a different space is great. And I also like my daughter's doing all these fun things like ice skating and jujitsu. And I'm kind of like, I want to take adult ice skating classes, and I think I'm going to sign up for a jujitsu class.
So Amy, we've talked a lot about playing. Like Jenny and I love to play too. Like I play hockey, Jenny rides. Like we love playing and doing fun stuff, and just how it is like, and kids I think bring that out of you. Like my son plays hockey, and it kind of brought me back to playing hockey and being able to compete and stuff like that. But I think kids really show us about the fun of playing, right? Like we all, do our workouts, and that's great. But it's like you said, going to the park and kind of just like getting back to just what it feels like to throw a ball or play chase or, just the fun things in life. Right.
Totally. My daughter just got to skip it. Do you remember those?
Yes. Oh my God. Is that the thing that goes around one ankle?
Yes. And it was so bad. And you're just kind of like jumping, because you're like your ankle and you're just jumping. And so I was doing it with her. I was like, wait, I am really good at the skip it. And I did it. And she was like, whoa, Ma, like you still got it. Like that is a muscle memory you get as a 5-year-old and you just never lose. And I was just like, oh my God, wait, I'm like sweating. I'm out of breath. This is
it's hard work. I remember trying to get my kids into, do you remember Chinese jump rope, or was that, I'm older.
No, I remember.
Jump rope.
No, it goes around your ankles. It's like an elastic. It goes around your ankles. There's two people. And then the person in the middle has to jump over the jump rope. It's not really a jump rope. It's like a big band.
It's like a net kind of,
So I remember trying to get my kids involved because I was like, this is so fun. And it does. It brings back all the stuff we used to do for fun.
Totally. Oh, how cool. Yeah. I love, playing is like the best.
I'm going to send you what it is. It's super fun. And you can get your daughter into it.
Perfect. So Amy, with this book, obviously, this is kind of like a big thought to considering writing another book, a follow-up, totally something different. Is that something that's on tap, or are you kind of like just being in the moment right now with everything that's going on?
Both. I'm very in the moment right now because there was like so much work, like the writing of the book, the querying of the agents, the rewriting of the proposal, the submitting to editors, the actual writing and editing and fact checking and copy editing and editing again and like actually submitting the manuscript. And then there was like this whole set up all the marketing kind of era. And then around end of February, right before the book came out, I was like, feel like I've done what I could. And I just sort of like let it roll. And I was like in enjoyment and celebration mode for the last 2 months.
Good.
And now things are calming down. It's like, the TED Talk was sort of like the culmination of my book launch phase, I'll call it. And now I'm in like sustaining phase where I'm still doing corporate speaking engagements and obviously podcast interviews about the book. And it's been really fun, and I'm definitely living in the moment and embracing all the abundance that I have received during this period of time because it's been far more successful than I could have ever imagined. But I'm also outlining my next book because I have a good idea.
Good.
So it's just in like rough notes, outline form. My agent's like, when am I going to get it? Well, like, come on. But I'm.
You want to give a teaser or no? Or you want to keep it quiet?
It's a similar, nonfiction leadership book that makes people examine their life through a different perspective. And, but instead of setbacks, it's just like the intersection of the different multi-hyphenate, areas that we embody throughout our lives from, it's a book about like how to embrace your identity, no matter what that is.
Perfect. We can't wait to read it. So you'll have to keep us posted.
Can't wait to write it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Like, not yet. So do you have any big vacations or anything planned to celebrate this?
I do. Yes. Family and I are going to St. Lucia at the end of the month. And then I have a friend's wedding in Santa Barbara in August. So I'll be going there. And then it's summer. So lots of like family, local beach vacations and things like that.
That's awesome. All right. One final question I want to ask. It's probably a tricky one because you've done a lot of amazing things, but what are you most proud of?
I'm most proud of my daughter.
I love it. That's what most moms say. I love it.
Everything she does, I'm just so amazed by. And I'm like, that's my kid. Like,
Yeah.
I'm raising her. Even like when she's excited about some big thing I get, I'm like, that's amazing that a 5-year-old can be proud of their parent. Like, that's cool. So
Yeah.
everything seen through her eyes is what I'm most proud of.
And I bet that's awesome. I bet as a typical 5-year-old, she's telling all her friends that her mommy wrote a book and she's like so proud of it, right?
Oh yeah. No, she's excited. She's
I
excited.
love it.
It's also like nice that I have something that I can explain to her. Like it's really hard to explain the marketing consulting that I do.
Yeah.
I go to companies and I tell stories about their brands and their products. She's like, what? And I'm like, I write books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mommy wrote a really good book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's awesome. So why don't if people want to reach out to you, what are some good connections? Like how can they connect with you?
The setbackcycle.com is a website where you can find out more about the book. It's also, linked to my personal website. So you can find me there. You can subscribe to my newsletter, Amy's Antidote. It's an antidote to your doom scrolling. And I'm on Instagram at Amy Show and LinkedIn just with my full name.
Perfect.
And I highly recommend doing those exercises in the book. I think it provides a lot of insight. So yeah, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And congratulations on the success of your book. And, we look forward to any upcoming ones you write.
Thank you so much. Thank you.